Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here, and today I wanted to go through some of Keir Starmer's speech setting out Labour's contract with the British people. You might have seen it online yesterday. I think it was streamed live on Periscope or something. So to preface, for anyone who hasn't seen my videos before, who doesn't know where I stand on this kind of thing, very, very briefly, I'm not pro-Tory, I'm terribly, terribly anti-Tory. I despise the Conservative Party, I always have done all my life. I grew up in a family that supported Labour, grandma used to like deliver leaflets and all that kind of thing. I was out on doorsteps and so was my mum. And then Keir Starmer got elected. I didn't vote for him, I voted for Rebecca Long-Bailey. I stayed for a while because I thought he was the unity candidate, human rights lawyer. I thought, fair enough, not as left as I would like, but you know, seems like a good guy. And then I started like trying to record everything that was going on, especially over the COVID period, like keeping diaries, and I was more and more worried about stuff. I began to see that the unity candidate was actually trying to actually get rid of left-wing people in the party, suspending activists, and then I discovered that he was suspending Jewish people for anti-Semitism. And apparently Jewish people in the Labour Party are 5 times more likely to be investigated or suspended for anti-Semitism under Keir Starmer's rules, which just set really major red flags off for me. Obviously the suspension of Corbyn, getting rid of Rebecca Long-Bailey directly after. I don't know if you guys remember, but sorry to get into this right now, I'll be trying to be quick. But do you remember when COVID was really bad? We didn't know what it was and it was spreading in the schools, and Keir Starmer was still in that place where he kept like going along with the government. And the teachers' unions, correct me if I'm wrong, they were saying that schools shouldn't be open because we have to protect the teachers. And Rebecca Long-Bailey stood with the teachers' unions, and shortly after that she was suspended from the party. They suspended her based on an article that she retweeted. I think she retweeted an article by, it was something to do with Maxine Peake anyway. But the timing was very suspicious, and ever since that pattern has really shown itself. It's very, at this point it's pretty obvious to me, very worrying. The shift towards bringing Labour to the centre is allowing everything to shift to the right. We're having anyone left of Starmer now, and this was the unity candidate, but he's now characterising anyone left of him, and I don't have a problem with anyone with his position, like personally, but to characterise those left of him as these radical, dangerous extremists is dangerous and is playing exactly into the Tories' hands, because it's just going to swing us further to the right, in my opinion. Not to preach to anybody else about what they should think, but in terms of me and my politics, I believe in policy and I have principles and beliefs about how I think things should be run. I consider myself to be a socialist. I have lots of different principles. I don't support based on a party. I don't support based on a name. Like, it's not like football teams. I've said this before. I've never understood people who support football teams, even when all the managers change and then the team change, and it doesn't make sense to me. No offence to the football fans out there, but like if it's no longer what I am invested in, then it's not something I support anymore. I don't believe in that kind of loyalty to any sort of like team or organisation or something like that. My personal backstory is that I grew up in quite a traumatic situation where a lot of those dynamics were at play, so I'm pretty well attuned to them, and it sets me off if I ever see anything like that going on. Like, I'm pretty attuned to it. So when I mentioned on Twitter yesterday, this blew up by the way, and hi if you're someone who's following me from that, I wasn't expecting it to happen. I made a tweet after seeing some of this speech and hearing about it, that was the last straw for me and that I could no longer vote Labour. So I left the Labour Party a while after. It wasn't immediately when Keir Starmer came in. Like, I did wait a while, and after a certain point I think it was after Jeremy Corbyn was suspended, I think. At that point I just thought I don't want to give my money towards this party because I didn't think it was standing up for my principles. And I don't really regard that as a big betrayal or anything like that, because like I say, like, I believe based on policy, so I'll vote where I believe in the policy. Like, I don't really care about labels and that kind of thing. So I'm not a member of the Labour Party. I actually, with the money that I gave to being part of the Labour Party, I actually signed up with Amnesty International because I wanted to try and do some good. But I was weighing up in my head, like even probably until yesterday, whether I would kind of like hold my nose and vote for Labour anyway, because to get the Tories out. And the thing that really bothered me, like I'm going to get into it in this speech, that I think really like epitomises what I'm trying to say here. It's not that I think that Labour will be as bad as the Tories. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that they're not different enough. So the two scenarios I can see happening, well, something I'm worried about. This Labour government, which is very central, it's not socialist, presenting that as the left. Once the political spectrum's changed enough, and Keir Starmer's already done so much harm, once it's changed enough that that's the left, even if they get in, of course, if they get into power, they're not going to be able to do what people want them to, because they're not putting in those socialist principles. Like, it will be more of the same. It might be marginally better, I do think that. They're not as bad as the Tories, but the vote will swing back because people will think, well, nothing's changed, we tried the left, and we're going to go back to the right. Better the devil you know. And because that's changed, people will think that's the left. So that will push people even further away from socialism in my lifetime, in my view. Like, I think it's so dangerous, because once people start thinking, oh, they're all the same, people don't want to vote. And actually, it's kind of happened to me, I have to admit. I was thinking I would vote anywhere to vote out the Tories, and then a couple of things just to explain my decision really quickly. And again, I'm not trying to influence anyone else, it's just my personal view on this. So my brother and I are mixed race, and the new Nationality and Borders Bill was proposed. Terrifying bill, a very racist bill. I've been worried ever since the Shamima Begum case, the implications of what that would mean, how that's being used. People, they always will use an emotional case, because people are obviously, with good reason, very wary about terrorism. Of course they are, like that's very natural. It's a really emotive issue for people, but they will always push an emotive issue in order to get something really dodgy through. So it will set the precedent. So they obviously made people feel very strongly about that, so that would be alright. So obviously now they can strip your citizenship, but they can also do that without notifying you, which is even worse. And Keir Starmer, to me, he's had multiple opportunities since, and he hasn't said anything about it. There's the new police bill, which will literally criminalise peaceful protest. Literally, the suffragettes, the Chartists, like all these different groups, the Stonewall riots, for example. I know that wasn't in this country, but still, all of these movements, even the most peaceful movements you can imagine, would be criminalised under this bill. And every opportunity Keir Starmer's had since, he did a Christmas briefing to do some sort of power play with Boris Johnson after he'd done his message or whatever that was, and he didn't mention it, he didn't bring it up. It really scared me. Obviously he hasn't been in touch with Zara Sultana, who has suffered extreme Islamophobic abuse in the party. I was worried a while ago when the same thing happened with Diane Abbott and it was just hushed up. This isn't a video about why I don't like Keir Starmer, but a lot of stuff has really worried me. So, with the police situation, at the time when there were riots going on, I watched those live, so I did see what was going on, and the protests were peaceful, and then the police turned up with their armoured, they had shields and things and batons, and obviously that inflamed the tensions, and I was actually watching some police running through the streets with dogs and with horses. And I'm not saying I'm not pro-violence or anything like that, but what I'm saying is it wasn't doing the difficult job of calling out the uncomfortable truth, which is that actually maybe the police were making things worse there, and he didn't do it. He didn't say it. Obviously, it came to a head with when Sarah Everard, her vigil happened. Police officers there were manhandling the protesters, which was awful. And Keir Starmer, didn't drop his support. And then even after we found out that the murderer of Sarah Everard, who I won't even say his name here, he doesn't deserve it. When we found out he had been a Met police officer and they knew a lot about him, they had quite a lot of background on his behaviour, he then said he didn't want Cressida Dick to resign, he didn't want Boris Johnson to resign after we found out about the COVID parties. Every single opportunity, it's been really truly worrying. To me, it's the Nationality and Borders Bill thing, the idea that it's now criminalised to rescue refugees. If they're drowning at sea and you bring them back, that's a criminal offence. And I believe his words, or the words of the people on his front bench, etc., were that they were wary about it, but because they were worried that it wouldn't be due process. It would be fine if there was due process. And he's not interested in changing systems. He worked within the systems. He was the head of public prosecutions. And actually some of the cases there, some of them he did a really great job in, but other times you were just seeing a misuse of power and bureaucracy instead of actually going for the power imbalance. I'm going to get into that here. There's so much more I could say, and I might make another video on it, but I feel truly, genuinely unsafe. I mean that genuinely from the heart. I'm not just trying to say that. This Nationality and Borders Bill, this increase in hatred towards refugees, this increase in we need more borders, nationalism, patriotism, all this stuff happening at once, is very worrying to me. It's so worrying. Which came to a head recently. Tony Blair has been put on the honours list, so he's going to be knighted, Sir Tony Blair. I don't believe that we should even have the honours system. I've never liked the fact that Keir Starmer is a Sir. Why would a leader of the Labour Party want a title like that? But especially, even putting the honours system that I don't like aside, the idea that a man responsible for a million deaths, a million Iraqis, it's estimated, the fact that he could be knighted after that just horrifies me. I'll put the petition link in the description box, but the thing that shocked me more than that, more than him, I know how that works, I've seen that happen, the thing that really shocked me is that so many people, a lot of people who do support Starmer's point of view, not all, but some of them, they say, well, yes, that was bad, but Blair did this, Blair did that was good. And I don't mind someone saying, like, this part was absolutely awful, this bit of policy I appreciated. But so often the tone, I don't know how to explain it to you, you probably might have witnessed it yourself. It was like, oh, stop complaining, like, you're just a radical lefty, or it's about Corbyn. They always make everything about Corbyn. Like, it's not about Corbyn, this is about Tony Blair and the people that died and him getting knighted. It's literally nothing to do with Jeremy Corbyn, but they still made it about Jeremy Corbyn. They're completely obsessed, and then they say that we're obsessed. Like, I promise you, I'm not. I like and admire Jeremy Corbyn, I respect him very much. I would love to have the opportunity to meet him or something like that, but I don't like, he's not like some messiah or anything like that. Like, he's just a normal, flawed person, I imagine, like anybody else. And he hasn't been in the Labour Party for quite a while now, so they really are, like, completely obsessed. But the way people were talking about all these people, and this is something that's really struck home for me recently as well, because of the Israel and Palestine situation. And it's that the horrible realisation that I think has been fostered by the tabloids for so long, and it's been indulged in by the media for so long, is that I honestly believe that we have a really, really terrible situation in this country. We have a disease, and the disease is casual, normalised dehumanisation of Muslim people of colour especially. Because if you'll notice, in much of these situations where we have refugees, or people need foreign aid, or people are being oppressed, if you look at the ones that are dismissed, it's usually where the people are people of colour, brown people, brown Middle Eastern people, and or Muslims. That's usually what we're looking at. So I kept trying to, I don't know how to get it into people's heads. I'm sorry to ramble, I will get to this in a minute. But the people saying, oh, what Blair did wasn't too bad, I don't know how to explain that, and I don't know if you even can explain, and it's quite upsetting. How can you explain to somebody that human life is just sacred? Sorry if you can hear the dogs, by the way, there's some dogs over there making a lot of noise. But, like, how do you explain to people that it doesn't matter where people live, or what colour they are, or what religion they're in, what culture, anything. Like, we all have hopes and dreams and fears and lives and families. We're all scared, in danger. You know, when we hear bombs, we are afraid, and we try to protect those around us, and some of us will become angry about it, and some of us might fight back, and some of us might become very depressed and withdrawn and be scared for our families. Like, we don't afford Muslims and people of colour, like especially Muslim people of colour, even in this country, the same empathy. Like, we cut the empathy, we cut the compassion for specific people, and it's been incredibly worrying. Again, with Palestine, I really do feel that part of the reason why we don't do more to support the people of Gaza and to support Palestinians is because the association we have in this country that's so widespread. Oh, Muslims, oh, they're brown people, they're not like us, they're not westernized people, like, oh no, terrorism, like the humanity's just cut. It's absolutely horrific. And I can't be part of that. I've waited for Keir Starmer to offer me something, anything, that will show that, you know, maybe I thought at times, you know, maybe he's waiting, maybe he's just trying to, like, win trust, and then he'll try and change people's minds, but he's playing right into it. And I'll get to the speech now and explain my thoughts on that. But it's more than anything else, it was a feeling of despair. Like, it wasn't like a spiteful, oh, I'm so glad, take that, Keir Starmer. It's an actual feeling of, there's only so much you can say to people when you just realise they don't care about other lives, and it's upsetting. It's like, how do you make these people care? Like, how can you make people feel that? Like, I don't view politics as a game, and sometimes I get stick because I'm not the most politically educated, and I hold my hands up. I'm always trying to educate myself. I come at things from a very emotional lens. To me, that's politics. I'm not a politics student. I don't know. I try and learn. I do try and read. I'm not a politics student, you know, but it's not a game to me. It's lives. I see every issue as attached to lives and to people, and all of those people are just as valuable as I am, and I try and think about that when I look at conflicts abroad. I know we all have our own internal prejudices, but I'm always trying to question those in myself, and trying to think into those people's shoes and think, what if it was me, what if it was our family, what if we were in that same situation? That's how I come at things. So yeah, disclaimer, so let's get to this speech. Today I want to do something that leaders of the opposition rarely do. I want to celebrate the country we live in. It's normally the job of the opposition to criticise and oppose, but it can make us sound pretty miserable. It can sound as if we don't realise our own historical good fortune to have been born in a peaceful, creative, liberal democracy. So from the get-go, what we're having this complete detachment, this distancing from Corbyn's Labour, which obviously it bothers me, especially for a unity candidate. You would think that you want people all together. It's very much, we're different, we're doing something that, it's okay, I'm not saying this is exactly what it says, but this is what I read from it, and it might just be my own interpretation. It feels like when they say that, they used to say that Jeremy Corbyn wasn't patriotic enough because he cared about the victims that weren't just from Britain, so he would care about different world issues, and they would use that as if it was a bad thing. He's disloyal, he's a traitor to us, because sometimes he doesn't take our side. Now for me, that is admirable, because I don't think, looking at our history, we should always take our side. I hesitate to even say our side, because, it's the governments of places, it's those in power who do these awful things. I mean, when you look back at the British Empire, obviously it wasn't the fault of the regular, just British people, but the people in charge did that stuff in the name of the British Empire, for example, and I think it's really, really awful. Yeah, you would have him being absolutely, crucified for, oh, is he going to wear a poppy? Is he listening to the Queen's speech? How British is he? How British is he? And also, it's a racism, and I know it's a weird thing to say because Jeremy Corbyn is white, but I really, truly think that part of it is because he was dangerous, because he was a white man. He was a white, older man who joined up and allied unexpectedly with the oppressed, and he was using what he had and always had to link to those causes. And because it's hard to, you can't use racism against a white man in that regard. You can't dismiss someone like, that racists, unfortunately, will see someone like Jeremy Corbyn and they won't hate him because he's white. They'll hate him for what he represents, but they will regard him as a traitor. It's still somehow attacking these ethnic minorities, these places abroad, because it's that feeling of, you are the other, you're disloyal, you're a traitor, and what's your crime? Your crime is that you don't always put us first. Sometimes you think about other people, you stand for ethnic minorities, you stand for these things, you care, therefore you're not ours. That's, looking back on a psychological level, I think that's a lot to do with Jeremy Corbyn. I think that's so many of his causes, which, to any right-thinking person, I mean, if we look at, for example, Desmond Tutu, when he died recently, we had this erasure from people like David Lammy and Keir Starmer and a lot of the new Labour front bench, for example, who erased a lot of Desmond Tutu's own beliefs. Desmond Tutu was a religious man who was brilliantly pro-gay rights, even at a time when it wasn't popular, and he really, really supported the people of Palestine, but also the people of Israel. And his argument, which I think is fantastic and I agree with, is that actually, until the Palestinians have human rights and they are safe, only that can make the Israelis safe. I really do agree with that. I think in terms of common humanity and just caring for lives and not wanting innocents to die, I think the way that can be achieved is if the Palestinians are treated with respect and they're not occupied. And Desmond Tutu was obviously a supporter of BDS, Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions, which is a peaceful protest against the Israeli government, for example. And it was a tool that they used to help stop apartheid in South Africa, obviously. So we've got people like Keir Starmer and David Lammy talking about this guy, but under the Labour Party current rules, if Desmond Tutu was a member of the Labour Party, Desmond Tutu himself, he would be suspended or investigated as potentially being anti-Semitic because he was pro-BDS. We also had Desmond Tutu talking about he wouldn't share a platform with Tony Blair because he believed that he needed to go to an international tribunal, to go to The Hague and to answer for his war crimes and his militarism. And I mean, if we look, for example, this is not a video about this, but I'm very interested in the arms trade. I think it's very, very evil. If you look at the link between Tony Blair and BAE Systems and Saudi Arabia, what all that weaponry is doing, the people that make money from the weaponry, people that are part of the chain, all that stuff, it's incredibly disturbing, it really is. But so you've got one day people praising Desmond Tutu but sanitising his message, which is the most awful disrespect you can do to someone when they die, really. It's to sanitise their beliefs and what they worked so hard for. And then the next day you've got them praising Sir Tony Blair, well deserved, they're saying. And it's so hypocritical, I just despise it. He says here that leaders of the opposition rarely celebrate the country. Oh, okay, I want to celebrate the country we live in. Leaders of the opposition rarely do. just a little bit of context here. I did my degree was in English literature with creative writing. I'm in my final years of my creative writing master. Analysing language is my thing. Sorry if I get really, really into this, but that's kind of what I like to do. I want to celebrate the country that we live in, and having that following, this is something that leaders of the opposition rarely do. So again, that's implying that Jeremy Corbyn and what he represented a hatred of Britain. It's not just saying we're patriotic, it's going beyond that, and it's saying that what Jeremy Corbyn did was against you. Jeremy Corbyn wasn't patriotic. Jeremy Corbyn wasn't one of us. And I would argue that, in my perspective, Jeremy Corbyn did celebrate the country we live in for the potential that we have. For me, I think the most loving thing you can possibly do for your country, and for other countries everywhere, is to try and help people in need and to try and be compassionate. Try and help mental health services and the NHS and education. And that's the greatest love. That's so much more loving to me than a flag. It's normally the job of the opposition to criticise and oppose, but it can make us sound pretty miserable. Well, he didn't actually oppose. Like, it's usually the job of the opposition to oppose, but, he kind of didn't during COVID when people needed it. Like, people on the front lines needed him to do something, and he didn't. We had Marcus Rashford actually having to stand up for kids that needed lunches. And then he was praised for it by the establishment, by Boris, praised for it by Keir Starmer, like, oh, good lad, well done, what a brilliant thing you did. But that was Keir Starmer's job. Well, obviously it was the government's job to do it in the first place. It was their fault, but it was also the opposition's job to step in. Instead, this footballer, this working class guy, man of colour, who doesn't want to have to step into the political arena, I'd imagine. He's a footballer. He's already going to get enough abuse from people, and he already does. But he had to step up and become that figure. He had to take all that for those kids when that was Starmer's job. And let's not forget, obviously, Captain Tom. I think the symbol, what's become of Captain Tom, is not very great, but I think he seemed like a nice guy, a kind old man who did what he could, and he was very frail, and he walked, and he wanted to make money for the NHS. But the way that was turned by everyone, they saw it as this light of hope. And yeah, the goodness of a person wanting to do that for people is really hopeful. I wouldn't take that away from the man, but people miss the massive part of that, which is that this elderly man is doing this physical challenge because our NHS is so underfunded and so mistreated that it needs charity. That was horrific. He says, it can sound as if we don't realise our own historical good fortune to have been born into a peaceful, creative, liberal democracy. And again, it's like a whitewashing. This is the thing that frustrates me so much. I don't deny that we're lucky here, of course. But it's that idea that it really, all these things put together, like all the policies, the inaction, all this stuff together makes me feel like it's nationalism. It's going beyond patriotism. It's we are Britain, we're the ideal, we set the tone. It feels like the very progressive sort of racism. So it's not a flat out, we want to have nothing to do with you, you're lesser than us, you're nothing. It's we feel for you, but we know better. Let us, we'll make the decisions here. And remember, we weren't born into a peaceful, creative, liberal democracy. The reason that we have a democracy is because people protested. All of these things were hard won and fought for, and they were fought for by people who would now be criminalised by the police bill, which Keir Starmer doesn't mention. How are we going to maintain a peaceful, creative, liberal democracy if this man is talking about further spending on military issues, and he's not opposing the police bill? Like, it doesn't make sense. It's all words, but they don't mean anything. It's all just, you look behind it and there's nothing. I don't know if you guys watched Doctor Who. I don't know if you knew the Harold Saxon storyline. But there's a storyline in Doctor Who where the Master, who's the villain, he uses a bit of hypnosis to kind of mind control people ever so slightly. So he pretends to be the Prime Minister, he gets elected even though he's this evil villain, and they don't realise who he is. And when the Master asks people, humans, like, why did you vote for him? They go, oh, I don't know, he sounded good, he sounded nice. And the Doctor goes, what are his policies? And they're like, I don't know, he just sounded good. That's what this is. Then he goes on to say, think of all that the British have to be proud of, the rule of law, Her Majesty the Queen, right. This is what frustrates me. So it starts with British pride, and to me that standpoint in itself, it's really going patriotic. It's not about, for me personally, I have a weird relationship with patriotism. I don't believe in it because I just think we're just born wherever we are. We don't earn it. It's not our achievements of the past. We're just born wherever we are. It's just luck. We're just people. We're not better or worse. We're not the sum of our history as individuals, and we can't take responsibility for that in a good way or a bad way, and we shouldn't. We should all just be born wherever we are and try and do good where we can. Like, I I don't believe in it. Her Majesty the Queen, though. This is the leader of the Labour Party. We've got Sir Keir Starmer saying that Britain should be proud of Her Majesty the Queen. And, you know, you may have, you know, you might be someone who's pro-monarchy, you might not be, but the idea that that is something that would bring us together in pride from the Labour Party, this is an undemocratic leader. She's not democratically elected. She has power based on hereditary privilege. That's the institution. It's an institution based on imperialism. And actually, I have a lot of thoughts on the royal family. I do genuinely feel quite sorry for the family themselves, because I think the system is... I don't think it's right that people should be brought up and they can't get into politics, and they do public arrangements and they're better than everyone else, but also there's scrutiny from the day they're born just because they're born, and it sounds very, very toxic, the whole thing. Universal public services, a creative heritage that is the envy of the world, and a thriving civil society on which we have relied so heavily during the pandemic. And again, I'm not saying that we don't have a great creative heritage in this country, like we really do. We have some amazing artists that have come from Britain or have come to Britain and reside here. Like, we have amazing artists. But again, it's pushing that, the envy of the world. Why? Why does it have to be we're the envy of the world? Why can't it just be we're part of the world? These are our siblings in every country. Like, we're all just part of the human race. We're not the envy of the rest of the world. We're not better, we're not worse. But we're proud, you know, it's great. We've got some really great people here, and there's great... It just feels weird. I don't know how to describe that. It feels so odd. To all the delivery drivers who work through the supply problems, the workers in the NHS putting themselves in the line of danger, the care workers who made Christmas special, thank you. He says that, but at the time he went along with the government. He says this now. It's like erasing the fact that he didn't oppose at the time. Today I want to describe a government that might be worthy of you. One of the best characteristics of the British people is that we are fair-minded. Our instinct in a national crisis is to give the government the benefit of the doubt. And because the pandemic posed an unprecedented problem, we, Her Majesty's opposition, did the same. Her Majesty's opposition? Are you that's bizarre. What do you mean I guarantee you the Queen doesn't care. I guarantee you the Queen will have... Why would... It's ridiculous. Her Majesty's opposition. How are people on the left, like, or just the Labour Party, why bring the Queen into it? I don't understand what that has to do with our elected officials and government. One of the best characteristics of the British people is that we are fair-minded. Again, it's this kind of bigging up of we, the British, are so civilised, but what do we do to back it up? You know, like, I could understand it if he used this speech to say, look, we're fair-minded and that's why we oppose the police bill and that's why we want to help Gaza and that's why we want to help people in Yemen. But he doesn't make those arguments. It's just, we're better, we're Britain, isn't it great? It's like that, the way people view the 2012 Olympics as this great moment. And it's a smokescreen because it was exciting to happen, but there was a lot of inequality then. You know, it was like a bit of a dream world for people. We supported where we could, we questioned where we had to, but the British people did not like being taken for granted. What do you mean we questioned where we had to? It's just a denial of the truth. It's just not true. And they do not like being taken for fools. A government which refuses to follow the rules it sets for the rest of us loses the moral right to set those rules. And I do agree with that. I definitely do agree with that part. I don't think he pushed it hard enough at the time, and I still don't think he is necessarily. But also, that being said, I don't think Keir Starmer is particularly honest. I'm not saying that he's, you know, his policy or anything is worse than the Tories, but it doesn't really work if somebody who is breaking all their own pledges then turns around and says, oh, well, you can't trust Boris. It's like, well, that's true, but why would we trust you? And again, there's all these things peppered in. It's meant to appeal. I think this speech is meant to be read by any person reading this, I think, can project. If they're not following what's going on in the history of this, I think they can project whatever they want onto it. I think that's the point. I think it's deliberately appealing to basically anybody but the left. He obviously doesn't want anyone left of him having any power, of course. But everyone else, it's almost dog whistling. It's laying these little clever, these little phrases that will appeal to people who might be racist, to people who might believe in that stuff. You can't prove anything. It's not something that can be proved. It's just these little hints. It's these little pushes. It's like a wink, isn't it? It's like, I'm not going to say it, but yeah. You know, he says, energy bills are going up, wages are stagnant, tax rises are coming in April, too many people do not feel safe in their streets, and good luck to anyone trying to get a quick GP appointment. But, okay, so, first of all, Keir Starmer's not really supporting a wage increase for key workers who worked in hospitals or anything, is he? I'm pretty sure that wasn't something he did. He was somebody who actually used to support the idea of £15 minimum wage, and then recently said that that would be too ambitious. Too many people do not feel safe in their streets. Okay, but phrasing it like that, what do you mean too many people don't feel safe in their streets? Because what do you mean? Do you mean women don't feel safe on the streets because of situations like the Sarah Everard murder? In which case, why don't you do anything about... You didn't do anything about that at the time. You supported the police the whole way through it. Do you mean that? Do you mean racist people? Do you mean racist people who might see people of colour walking around and be afraid? Oh, I'm afraid because I've seen a brown person walking around. Like, what do you mean by that? And it's useless me even saying what do you mean by that, because that's the point. It's meant to be open to those interpretations. I want to start the new year by making a pledge of straight leadership. Today I want to introduce my contract with the British people. This will be a solemn agreement about what this country needs and how good government should conduct itself. And then he talks about trust being earned, Labour doesn't simply inherit from the Tories. Okay, so the very first clause of that contract is a binding commitment about decency and standards in public life. Of course, these standards already exist. They are known as the Nolan principles of selflessness, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. My solemn promise to you will always be to run a government that honours those principles. Well, that may be true, but he hasn't run by those principles based on his leadership of the Labour Party so far. So what allows us to believe that he would in government? Because it doesn't make sense. Remember that Keir Starmer was elected on 10 pledges, and all of the pledges he's broken, and he's said this himself, this isn't just me twisting words, he's actually said he's willing to break any pledge at all in order to be elected. So it's quite obvious that, you can't trust exactly what he's going to say. So he'll say he's going to do something to get the vote, but then once you've voted, there's no guarantee he'll do it. There's not enough trust there. You could give him your vote, but then you don't know what he's going to do with it. He could suddenly turn around and say, yes, I broke that to get elected, and now I'm going to do this. You don't know what he's going to do. So I don't think he's offering selflessness, and he's not offering honesty. I don't think he's offering leadership. I think he's really divided people. And he's certainly not offering integrity. So he says that his contract will be based on 3 simple principles: security, prosperity, and respect. And this is what I really, really wanted to talk about in this video. Like, this is the crux of this whole thing, these 3 words. Of course, like, they sound like great words, don't they? They sound great, security, prosperity, and respect. But it's so open. So, security. Security for who? Does this mean weaponry? Does this mean national security? Does it mean harsher borders? Whose security? The security of women on the streets, the security of ethnic minorities, the security of British Muslims, the security of refugees and asylum seekers that we have a duty to? Or what does he mean by that? It could apply to anyone. Security? You ask any person in the world, would you like security? They'd say, yeah, sure, but what do you mean? Prosperity, number 2. Yes, of course, everyone wants prosperity. It's another one of those words, isn't it? It's like me saying to you, would you like a government that's good? And then someone going, yeah, I would like a government that's good, and that being it. Imagine if my three promises were just good, great, and wonderful. Like, that's what it feels like. Don't you want good? Don't you want great? Don't you want wonderful? But don't ask me what I mean. Okay, so yeah, prosperity. But, like, what does he mean by prosperity? Like, how? In what way prosperity? And prosperity for who? For the rich? Because he's not backing the higher minimum wage like he said he would. He didn't agree that the NHS workers should be given more money, so what does he mean by that? Sorry about that, I just had a phone call. So, yeah, respect. Again, respect for who and respect for what? Like, that's important, isn't it? I mean, anybody wants respect, but what do we respect? What don't we respect? Do we respect arms sales? Do we respect people using hate speech? Like, do we respect racism? Do we respect anti-immigrant sentiment or people who want to harm refugees or believe it's okay for them to drown? Like, it means nothing, it's just a word. Okay, so he gets into more detail. So, in terms of security, everyone has the basic right to feel safe in their own community. We all need to know that the NHS is there for us when we need it. And if we work hard, we should also have the right to job security. Okay, number 1. Everyone has the basic right to feel safe in their own community. Of course they do, but without specifying that this needs to apply to vulnerable and marginalised groups, this can apply to a racist person that doesn't feel safe because there's black people in the community. I mean, come on. Okay, we all need to know that the NHS is there for us when we need it. Yes, we do, but I don't get it, because when the NHS workers needed more money, like, Starmer didn't support that. He went along with the government the whole time. The NHS was under so much strain. People who work for the NHS were either traumatised because, they had to deal with all these deaths, or they caught it themselves and were ill or have long COVID or even died. And Starmer was just with the government. And when Jeremy Corbyn got the evidence that the Tories were planning to sell off the NHS to privatise it, nothing happened. Keir Starmer didn't say anything. Number 3, and if we work hard, we should also have the right to job security. And I loathe this. I absolutely loathe this. So this idea, Labour's big focus on working people, and don't get me wrong, like, it should be a party that supports workers. It should be a party that supports unions, which is part of an issue where we've had Labour breaking picket lines, we've had Labour not supporting unions, like, we haven't had them doing what they should. But also, this intense focus on, if you work hard, people who work hard will be alright. But what does that mean if you read behind that? Because remember, we've got Rachel Reeves now in the shadow cabinet who said that she wanted to be even harder on those on benefits, right? She thought that the Tories were too soft. She wants that to be even worse. You know, we've already got the DWP, which is incredibly immoral and dehumanising for people who are disabled and in need. This idea that if you work hard, you get job security, but that's the point. Who defines what working hard is anyway? Why is it that people who are on minimum wage shouldn't get a rise in their minimum wage? Don't they work as hard? Don't they work as hard as politicians work? Okay, so the second one, prosperity. Everyone should have the opportunity to thrive. I mean, yes, but again, it's like a bit blanket, isn't it? Like, to realise our ambitions and make a good life for ourselves. What is this? Like, sorry, I feel like I'm reading, like, it's nice, but it's like saying to someone, do you want a good life? Yeah, I do want a good life. Great, vote for us. How? It doesn't matter how. And lastly, to have the skills we need to prosper. So yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Like education, all those different things. I get that one. Okay, and then the third one in the contract. Respect is a less obvious political virtue than security and prosperity, but it is every bit as important. Everyone has the right to live in places we care for and to have our lives and ambitions taken seriously, to be valued for who we are and what we do. And it's like, okay, like, of course, like, that's obvious. It's like, would you like respect? Yes, I would like respect. But, like, in practice, like, we're seeing in the Labour Party right now, we're seeing left-wing Jewish people in the Labour Party 5 times more at risk of being suspended or put on trial for anti-Semitism by someone who's not Jewish, right? That's not respect. I mean, that's not respecting a community, is it? That's not respecting people and their lives and their communities and their ideas. He goes on to talk about Keir Hardie, of course, who he was named after. It was a patriotic government which understood the importance of national defence, which created NATO, the alliance that has preserved the peace in Europe ever since and gave this country its independent nuclear deterrent. The 1945 Labour government laid the foundations for the end of empire and the beginning of the modern Commonwealth. Right. I mean, I don't agree with why. I don't believe we should have a nuclear weapon. I don't believe anyone should have a nuclear weapon. I don't. Why would we? I don't understand why any of us would want that. Personally, I think it's ridiculous. Would we want ourselves to, like, send a missile somewhere and, like, kill a great amount of people? Is that the world we want to live in? He talks about under Wilson, so the Open University extended higher education, and I'm really grateful for that because I studied with the Open Uni. I'm disabled, so I couldn't have done it otherwise. So I do love the Open University very much. And then he talks about the Blair government introducing a national minimum wage and repairing public services, for example. I mean, I have issues because I think that what New Labour actually did was like a continuation of Thatcherism. Like, to me, it didn't help in the long run. It was obviously better than the Tories before, but the harm it's done since, for me, I don't agree with. Right, but then he says, and when I reflect on previous Labour governments, I have 2 thoughts. The first is what a record we have. That these 3 chapters of change, Attlee, Wilson and Blair, made Britain a better country. We must be the people who write the 4th chapter. The people who create a new Britain in the 21st century. And I just, look, I can't get on board with this. He's supposed to be a human rights lawyer. And he's, okay, it's fine, talk about the national minimum wage under the Blair government, fine. But then to talk about how Blair made Britain a better country. Like, first of all, to kill a million people, a million Iraqis, is a stain on our history. It's awful. And it's not just Iraqis that died. It was our soldiers, our service people, on these false pretences who went out there, got wounded, got traumatised, had emotional issues that they're probably still dealing with now, and were just left. And of course we have the whole region destabilised, which creates modern terror that people are still suffering to this day. We're still struggling with terror now. And also we've got the situation where they're saying, oh, we have to protect the borders, there's too many refugees and asylum seekers coming. Why do you think they're coming? Because the Middle East, it's been destabilised, it's been completely destabilised, partly due to our intervention, and then we're like closing the door on people. That doesn't make Britain safer or better. Nobody could look on that record and say that Labour is not a patriotic party. Those Labour governments had the ambition to build a society in which everyone can contribute and everyone is valued, to extend security, prosperity and respect to all. This is the tradition we embrace and the mission we inherit. First of all, why on earth is the angle of this patriotism? Like, why? I know why, it's a dog whistle, I do know that, but ridiculous. Second of all, you know, to talk about Blair, and to talk about security, prosperity and respect to all. Security how? Security for the destabilised Middle East, security for our service people, security for the Iraqis, security now because we're having both innocent people, refugees and asylum seekers trying to get here who are, you know, being treated appallingly, and then people complain and say, well, why should they come here when stuff's so bad here? And then also in terms of security, like, where do you think a lot of the terrorism stems out of those situations? So it's not made us security for who? Prosperity, like there were some gains obviously, but on the whole, I mean there was some dodgy stuff also. There was a lot of dodgy stuff, especially like for the vulnerable people, for the disabled. And respect to all. Now that is what I just can't abide. I'm sorry, respect for all. Where is the respect for the Iraqis? And where is the respect for our service people that were sent there? And where is the respect for the British public that were lied to? That were just blatantly lied to? Like where's the respect in that? Where's the respect? The first duty of a government is the security of its citizens. I was once this country's leading prosecutor. Crime and antisocial behaviour are issues that matter to me personally. I have seen too many victims of crime, most of them not at all well off, not to know that security is a matter of social justice. That sounds okay, like, yeah, that's fine. But then, that's why Labour will provide crime prevention teams in every neighbourhood. New police hubs will be visible in every community. We will introduce a tough new approach to closing down drug dens, with new powers for local police and local authorities. Do the police need more power? Do the authorities need more power on this? And this sums it up, okay? He comes at this from a point where, you know, oh, people on drugs, oh, that's bad, lock them up. But he doesn't think deep enough because he's part of the system. He's so, like, such a bureaucrat. Like, he just follows the rules and follows the law. He doesn't have the initiative or even the moral goodness to think, well, wait, what's causing addiction? What's causing it? How can we help? Maybe it's because people need better mental health. Maybe people need help. Like, maybe we need to help addicts. Maybe we don't need to, like, criminalise these people. Maybe we need to help them and see how we can help the vulnerable people that may turn to drugs. Where's that? That's not respect and kindness. I'm assuming Starmer's just going to want these people to just be put in prison. I'm assuming that's the solution. Like, ugh. And I guarantee you, it won't be the rich people at Eton and the rich students who are taking drugs it won't impact them. And this bit I did quite like. This country has always made a world-class offer to a small section of society and a substandard offer to those who do not take the academic course. And I do agree with that. I'm someone who is academic and has, like, gone through, or I am doing, like, university. Obviously I'm disabled, so I'm doing my masters and stuff from home. But yeah, I do think that is a good thing. I do think that it's ridiculous that it's considered to be, like, better in some way to get a university education, because for so often it's just about who has the means to be able to do it. And again, he's talking here about the next generation of students being ready for work and ready for life, which obviously it sounds really good. But again, it's this massive emphasis on work, and if you work, you get this, but what does that mean for people who are disabled? Like, what does that mean for people who genuinely can't work? Because we've got, like I said before, we've got Rachel Reeves saying she's going to make it tougher. It's already very, very inhumane as it is. But what does it mean for those vulnerable people? Like, it's a difficult situation. He says, in the Britain we make, we will all play by the rules. I regard the rule of law as one of the things that make Britain great. One of the things that makes Britain great, due process, treating institutions with respect, the integrity of British justice has always been the envy of the world, and this has always been a big part of our economic success. I'm sorry, but that is absolute, I won't say what that is. That's ridiculous. Our laws have changed because people have protested. Time and time and time again. It's people who are on the left, these people that Starmer hates so much, people like Jeremy Corbyn, who actually stuck their necks out and said, no, we need to do something. We need to change things. These are the people that Starmer seems to agree it's fine to lock up due to the police bill, you know, dangerous extremist people. These are the people that changed the law. British law isn't inherently good or anything like that. You know, laws are just made by people. And when mood changes and people protest and people draw attention to more issues, they change. You know, the law by itself doesn't deserve respect by nature of its being law, because so often in history the law hasn't always been correct. I mean, just look back, for example, in my lifetime it wasn't legal to get married if you're gay. I couldn't marry my wife, I couldn't marry my girlfriend. Like, that's not something that I could have done by law. And at the time, they would have said, well, it's the law. But the law was wrong. You know, when we look back in the past, of course the law's been wrong before. It's not always about completely following the rules. And I don't mean like, oh, you know, break every rule. I mean to use the intelligence to think, can something be improved? Might something be unfair? How can we make something better? He doesn't have that quality. It's just follow the rules, due process, to the extent that he's seeming to go along with these fascist bills as long as it's due process. Oh my God. The integrity of British justice has always been the envy of the world. I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's true at all. Or, well, rather, British justice for who? Because remember, Britain and India, now my family are Indian, so yeah, they did a lot of law in India. Sure, justice was great there for British people. I don't necessarily, if you ask people in India about British justice, I don't think they would quite say it's the envy of the world. Because any successful contract is a two-way deal. You can expect access to high-quality healthcare, but there will be zero tolerance for abuse towards NHS staff. I completely agree with this, that's true. You can expect the opportunity to acquire new skills, but you will be expected to work hard and do your bit. Again, that work hard kind of thing. Like, I'm not saying it's wrong, please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying, oh, people shouldn't work hard if they can. What I'm saying is, there's nothing here. What about people who can't do that? Like, what about people who are ill? Like, what about people who are disabled? Like, it feels like it's leaning into that scroungers narrative, doesn't it? It really does, and it's worrying. I don't know if I'm articulating that right. I'm not saying that people shouldn't work hard and shouldn't do their bit for their communities. What I'm saying is there are lots of ways you can help your community and help people that aren't necessarily in this exact capitalistic mindset. I don't know if I'm articulating that right. The UK is a unique construct of 4 different national identities. It is complex and it can easily be exploited for political gain, as we have seen it in Northern Ireland, and the government is playing fast and loose with the peace agreement as the price of getting Brexit done. And a reckless government in Westminster that does not seem to care about what happens in Scotland erodes people's faith in our common bonds. But I believe in our union of nations. I believe we are better together than any of us would be apart. I believe that each nation can speak with a progressive voice. And actually, this is one of the only things that I actually disagree with Jeremy Corbyn on here. I don't see why, for example, Scotland, if they want to be independent, I don't think it's any of our business. Like, I mean, it's not for me to say either way whether they should or shouldn't be. Like, it's not our business. Like, why, how could we dictate to them, like, you should be with us, you should not be with us? Like, it's their choice, right? It's not about, oh, we all need unity together. Because, if I'm right, isn't it true that in Scotland, they actually wanted to remain in the European Union, but because they were part of the United Kingdom, they had to leave with us? I might be wrong on that, but again, it's that general sense that Keir Starmer does of general unity, but it's not like, there's no ground given, you know? It's not like, in order to have unity, I'll give this ground and I'll make this better. It's very much like, oh, just stop complaining, we're all one, and then it's like, but you're mistreating us. No, we're not, you're troublesome, go away. Security, prosperity and respect are also the values that should inform Britain's role in the world. I am determined that Britain should profit from our strong global relationships. That means not just getting Brexit done, but making Brexit work. And this is so rich. I don't know if you guys probably do already remember this, but I honestly believe the reason that Jeremy Corbyn lost was because of the Brexit stance. So remember, people voted to leave, and then from within the party, Keir Starmer himself started up that, like, do you remember there was that thing where it's like, oh, what does Labour think? Because loads of these people are coming out and saying they want to remain, and they're not respecting our vote, so I'm going to vote Tory. So I honestly think that's a huge part of what happened. Keir Starmer was one of these people, remember? Keir Starmer was so heavily Remain. He was one of those people. And now he's talking about getting Brexit done. It's a bit... And listen to this. When I spoke at the CBI last November, I described how we would approach this. Making Brexit work is painstaking work, and slogans won't cut it. My goals will be to repair the alliances that this government has damaged, while also ensuring that our borders remain safe and secure. May I repeat that? Our borders remain safe and secure. What is that? What is that supposed to mean? Safe and secure from who? What do you mean? Would you like to elaborate on that? What do you mean? The contract I want to agree with the British people is motivated by a desire to bring the country together. We do not bind a nation by emphasising what divides us. We build a nation from the common bonds between us, which doesn't actually make sense because all he's actually done since he was leader of the Labour Party, which is the leadership that we can look at, I would assume, to think how he's going to be as Prime Minister. And all he's done is attack people further left of him, tried to appeal to the right, and even his own people who work with him he's turned on. He's turned on Angela Rayner a couple of times. I mean, it's not giving me great hope. This is not a guy that's saying, like, let's all come together, I'll give you this ground if you give me this ground. It's my way or the highway and you're out. often the left are framed as really unreasonable in this, but honestly, there's no ground being given. I've seen so many people, and I mean, to be honest, I feel like one of those people who I'm not expecting Starmer to be as left as Corbyn was, but I am expecting that he sticks to some of his pledges, or at least makes that effort to say, right, we still value our activists, like, how can we work together, like, what can we give to you, what can you give to us? There's none of that. It's just this really authoritarian, outgone, we don't need you, we don't want you, and then suddenly it's like, wait, where are you going? You're going to let the Tories win if you leave. It's just weird. It's really strange. It's almost like it's like this abusive dynamic where it's like endlessly having a go at you, and then it's like, wait, where are you going? Now it's your fault. It's weird. Our high streets, our community centres, our places of worship, the spaces we share. The Labour Party is not a nationalist party, but it is a national party, because a nation gives us a place to belong. Right, the Labour Party is not a nationalist party, but it is a national party, because a nation gives us a place to belong. It's funny because it's weird. It would be like me saying, like, I am not a racist, but also sometimes I do racism. Like, it sounds like that. That's what it sounds like. And it's useless. It's so representative of everything he stands for. It's no meaning, it's just words. Nationalism's a bad word, so we won't use it, and yet we'll use the exact meaning of nationalism, and we'll appeal to nationalism. But what matters is the word, not the content. This is a remarkable nation with an extraordinary cultural heritage. British music, British fashion, British advertising, British acting, the diplomatic soft power wielded by the BBC, the world's greatest broadcaster, which enjoys its centenary this year. Right, okay, I'm not denying that we have extraordinary people in Britain, but also it feels like a dog whistle, because to say this without really emphasising like how enriched this country is by people who have come to this country, like by the mesh of cultures, to do all this patriotism and almost nationalism stuff but without including that, I could kind of live with him reframing patriotism. I've said this before online, but like I don't agree with it personally, but I can understand reframing patriotism as an idea. You know, taking it away from that sense and making it something that's more about mixed communities. But to just do it without adding any of that additional stuff is worse than useless. It's just pushing the original narrative. It's really dangerous. And also, the BBC. Are we talking about the same BBC that... Didn't they, like, edit Jeremy Corbyn with in front of the Kremlin or something, implying he was some sort of, like, national traitor or something? And didn't they also, like, they have people on there saying about... there was a joke, wasn't there, on Have I Got News For You about Jeremy Corbyn being a Nazi and all that kind of thing. Like... The BBC is not impartial. You know, let's just be honest about that. There's a lot of shows I do enjoy on the BBC. I love Doctor Who, like I like the soaps, I do like EastEnders and all that kind of thing, love Strictly. But it's not impartial. Like, it does need to improve. I think too of the scientists whose wisdom is guiding us through the pandemic are world-class industries of pharmaceuticals and financial services, universities which are a magnet for the best students the world over. There is so much of which we can be proud. Okay, but these scientists, these world-class pharmaceuticals, right? He won't say it. A lot of these people are immigrants, right? These people have come here, they have enriched our culture. It's almost like the ownership, like, oh, we're really proud of it, but also we're playing into nationalism. Like, this country has presented me with great opportunities. It's a great place to live, but I don't think you cease to be a patriot because you notice your country has flaws. On the contrary, the reason we in this party want to correct those flaws is precisely because we are patriotic. I don't believe this, and I think this is nonsense. I really, really do. He says that he wants to correct the flaws in the country, but he's openly talking about, like, he's talking with all these imperial talking points, all these colonial talking points. What flaws is he actually talking about? Like, we need more police? We need more people on drugs in prison? Like, are those the things he wants to fix? And there's another bit I do agree with here. It says here, it's the party that's the problem, let's be clear. This is not just about the flaws of one individual, it's about the flaws of a whole style of government, the flaws of an ideology, of a political party that's been in power too long. And I think he's right to say this, but I think it's too late. I think it's too little too late. I have worried for a long time that what the Tories are doing, because the media attention, the fall of Boris Johnson, which is definitely happening, I think, is being tied to him as a character. Okay, but I honestly feel like because it was presented that way, it's not a win for Starmer, because I think he must realise, because he put this in, he really needed to oppose the Tories more. Like, because he didn't oppose them, people are starting to think, well, Boris... They're even thinking, you know, Boris is a decent guy, but he's a bit of a buffoon, you know. Fair enough, I'd have a drink with him, but don't be in charge. So what happens if they replace him with either someone hardline like Priti Patel, or someone that centrists love, which is someone like Rishi Sunak? You know, because he didn't challenge the Tories enough. What's going to happen then? This year, 2022, is a big year. Great. What does Keir Starmer mention as the great thing that's happening this year? It's Her Majesty the Queen's Platinum Jubilee! It's actually laughable. I can't believe... This is the Leader of the Opposition. I feel like I'm reading, like, This is probably worse than David Cameron would read, right? Like this, what would you read this and think this was Labour? What do you mean 2022 is a good year because the Queen's having a platinum jubilee? What? Which gives us an opportunity. He talks about the World Cup and you know, the generous, tolerant, open nation that we are at our best. The England team is a living embodiment of a successful nation. Young men of many backgrounds united by their talent and their patriotic pride. Now wait a second. Okay, yes, united by their talent. I love that. I do love that about them. I do love that about the England team. I don't really support football that much. When I do, my favourite is actually the German team. I have a crush on Thomas Müller, like, sorry, I really do. But yeah, all that I got to until it went into patriotic pride. And also, it's a complete joke because what we had, I remember a time during the World Cup when it felt like, for example, Gareth Southgate, people like Marcus Rashford. I felt, Raheem Sterling as well, like I felt like they were on their own. I felt like they were facing all this racism and they were having to become these political voices that they should never have had to be. And I spoke before, didn't I, about Marcus Rashford and having to step up because kids were not being fed. Keir Starmer left them to that, and then he just takes credit for that, how wonderful that team spirit was. But he had nothing to do with it. He didn't support those people. You know, those players, especially people like Marcus Rashford, will have received so much racial abuse, but they never had to. I want to lead a government that does right by them. I want to create a national community in which everyone feels secure and everyone feels they belong. The Britain I want is a country in which those who contribute get something back. Okay, so what's contribution? What do you count as contribution? And what about the disabled? I'm really serious. What about the disabled and the vulnerable people? The people that you don't think are so useful? What does that mean? What does that mean? Is that not worrying to anyone else? I'm serious. I believe that the best still lies ahead for this country, but only if we have the courage to create a new Britain. A country in which you and your family get the security, prosperity and respect you deserve. My contract with the British people will set out how we can create that new Britain. Thank you for listening and Happy New Year to you all. And again, it's notable that there's a focus on family, isn't there? There's the big, so we've got patriotism, family, if you work hard you get the benefits, work hard, secure the borders, mentions of defence, all that stuff together, like surrounded in patriotism, nationalism, which he doesn't call nationalism, but a lot of talk about national pride, a lot of talk about pride based on name and identity, rather than what we do for each other. We've got all that stuff together. Defence, the military, Tony Blair, all those things. It's a worrying picture, and I guess coming to the end of the video now, but this is why I can't vote for him. I can't vote for him. I won't vote for him. It would be a betrayal of my principles and a betrayal of my own heritage and my own family, and I won't do it. I'm going to try and find other... I'm not going to be like apathetic or anything. I want to still help people. I want to try and find a way. I am disabled, so that stuff's really hard, but I want to try and find a way that I can help in some way to try and make things a little bit better, and I'm not sure how. I really do want to try and do that. But I just feel like at this point I'm not taking part in that system now. Like I've decided I can't go through this system where it's just a two-party system where you're always voting for the lesser of two evils, and then you get one, you get the other one, and if you don't vote you're blamed, and it's wicked, it's awful, it's gaslighting. It's, you know, I've dealt with this in a family dynamic, I've dealt with this in my past and my childhood. I'm not dealing with that from political leaders. I'm not dealing with it, and I'm not taking part in it. I'm not having that on my conscience. It's very clear to me that what Keir Starmer is offering is not going to protect me as someone who is disabled. Other people in my community who are worse than me, who need it more than me. In fact, he's made it very clear that possibly things will get worse, because if the left goes along with those talking points from the right and legitimises them, it's made it worse. If it's just the right doing it, you've still got a bit of support, but if it's now the left and the right, and anyone, I say the left, the centre has now become the left, and anyone further left than the centre is now considered to be a dangerous radical. I find it worrying, and you know, when you look back in history about eugenics, the way people are treated, like, it's really worrying to me. It deeply, deeply worries me, but what can I say? Thank you for watching this video. Sorry it's so long. Not a politics student, would love to hear your thoughts. Please don't be mean in the comments about me, like say what you think about, like, it's fine, like the content of the video, like my opinions on stuff, you know, Keir Starmer, this speech, but not like abusive stuff. But, you know, otherwise, go right ahead, freedom of speech. I'd be interested to hear it. I might not agree, I might agree, I might, you know, change my mind, I don't know, but let me know what you think. Anyway, I love you loads, hope you're keeping safe, and sorry this is so long. Alright, love you, bye!